Om Sarasvati Namah. Om. The one who is at play everywhere says, "There is a space in the heart where everything meets. Come here if you want to find me. Mind, senses, soul, eternity, all are here. Are you here? Enter the bowl of vastness that is the heart. Listen to the song that is always resonating. Give yourself to it with total abandon. Quiet ecstasy is here, and a steady, regal sense of resting in a perfect spot. You who are the embodiment of blessing, once you know the way, the nature of attention will call you to return. Again and again, answer that call and be saturated with knowing, I belong here. I am at home." This from the Radiance Sutras by Lawrence Roach. Translations of ancient Sanskrit writings, and edited by our friend Melanie Faust, who posted this sutra recently, and I thought it was so beautifully appropriate for this time as Venus descends into the Heart Gate to clear the clutter of the heart chakra. And I love that the image on this edition of the Radiant Sutras is of the Venus transit, when Venus could actually be seen in an interior conjunction in front of the disk of the sun. This one was in 2004 in the sign of Gemini, and 8 years later in 2012, the same, and those were the only two for our lifetime. And this, of course, is the Leo cycle, so let's check in with where we are in that mix. Today is Sunday, the day of the sun, December 6th, 2015. And tomorrow, December 7th, 2015, chakra color coding, we see that Venus descends into the gate of compassion, the heart chakra. This spiritual schedule brought to you by the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, Daniel Giamario and Kaylin Castell. Tammy Brunk is another shamanic astrologer who's doing incredible work with this cycle now. And so I began with a short chant to Sarasvati, who brought us language and music and communication in so many ways, because we are still in this Venus month of clearing the clutter around the throat chakra. So it's been a time of music and sound for me. Speaking of the sutras, we are going to drink today a 20-year-old pu'er titled Diamond Sutra by T. Monk Po, who resides at the magical Wonderland in Portland. This is not a tea I often drink before speaking, as it's a wonderful tea for meditation. So we'll see if I'm able to talk after imbibing. And I have selected a couple cups for you and for Spirit. They are the Moon and Venus. And today I'll drink from my cup, a 12-sided Astro Cup given to me by Brother Omar Riverstone, and from my other cup for my inner other. Well, it's been a while since I've checked in. I was at a party last night, played some saxophone, and saw some friends. Where have you been? Where have you been? And it's funny that that statement was basically like, we haven't seen you posting on Facebook so actively as you have been this year. And even with this Venus material, I've been pretty quiet recently. I've been traveling a lot. I went to Hawaii for a couple weeks for my 40th birthday and my Venus synodic return, and then for my grandfather's birthday in Las Vegas, and a short time home before visiting my sister in Washington, D.C., and spending some time investigating the mysteries of the monuments there. And yeah, I've been very productive internally, and it's been a time this month of me really engaging with my own process of this Venus cycle. I love speaking about this and sharing this information, but I'm also doing it or being it, yeah. So it's been a really beautiful month of contemplation and really working consciously on clearing the clutter of the throat chakra of truth. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today and really engage with clearing the clutter of the heart chakra as we are called to do this month. So tomorrow, Venus and the moon meet again in the morning sky at exactly 3 degrees Scorpio. So the moon-Venus conjunction is at 9:25 a.m. in Seattle. Of course, we wouldn't see it then because the sun has risen, so we'd have to go back a few hours here to see Venus high and bright in the morning sky. And she's still 42 degrees from the sun, and she maxes out at 48 degrees, so she's still at a rather long elongation, high and bright. And unfortunately in Seattle right now with the gray skies, we're probably not going to see her. And I'm sad to miss this one particularly because it's Venus and the moon, but also a Comet Catalina. This image, by the way, is at earthsky.org, a really wonderful site for astronomical happenings that I highly recommend. And one thing you'll find if you find your way to this site is that tomorrow this crescent moon-Venus conjunction is an occultation. And what that means is that the moon is basically eclipsing Venus, coming between Earth and Venus in such a way that it hides her light from us. So that image won't be available in Seattle, not only because of the clouds, but because the exact conjunction is after sunrise. It's other places on Earth where this could be seen. But that's a pretty magical thing in occultation. The light being hidden, in a sense, this energy of an eclipse. And as I mentioned, there's this other very special happening with this particular Moon-Venus conjunction, this descent into the Heart Gate for Inanna, in that the crescent moon and Venus will be accompanied by a wild card, the Comet Catalina. And I've been thinking about comets a lot lately because I've been reading this amazing book by Graham Hancock, who's such an incredible researcher and speaker. His book, Magicians of the Gods, which is really a follow-up to a book that he released 20 years ago called Fingerprints of the Gods, a classic where Graham makes a very strong statement, an argument for the existence of just a highly advanced ancient civilization on Earth a long time ago. His idea is about 13,000 years ago that this civilization thrived, and then something happened. And he's brought forth this follow-up, Magicians of the Gods, now basically in response to so much recent scientific finding that yes, there was a great cataclysm on Earth about 13,000 years ago, which began what's known to archaeologists as the beginning of the Younger Dryas period, an ice age that happened about 11,000 BC, and Graham's really bringing in information around that time and also around 9600 BC, and arguing that the cooling temperatures, a very strong movement into an ice age, 13,000 years ago was the result of a comet striking Earth. And his theory is that then the warm spikes that followed a couple thousand years later, around 9600 BC, were also a result of pieces of that comet coming to strike the ocean and causing somewhat of a greenhouse effect to bring warmer energies. So why does this apply to us in this Venus gate tomorrow, Monday, the day of the moon, when the crescent moon embraces Venus in the morning sky, and then just hours later occults her light? Well, for one reason, those of us in Seattle, Graham Hancock's speaking here and signing books tomorrow at the University Bookstore at 7 p.m. So if you live here, I really highly recommend coming to hear Graham speak. He's a very amazing man, and fighting the good fight for those who would call real data pseudoscience. Or I guess maybe against those. For the rest of us who want to know truth, and as we've been clearing the clutter of the throat chakra this last month, well, this is a very powerful thing. I mean, we're not only asked, I find, to address the cultural conditioning, the rules of our society that would keep us from speaking our own personal truth, but how has truth at large been suppressed over time, and why? So today I wear this green shirt I found in Hawaii because green is the color of the heart chakra. This is my heart chakra crystal here on my tea table. It's a green fluorite and kind of has that diamond look, that octahedron. But the symbol for the heart chakra is the star tetrahedron, or the Star of David as we might know it. You know, the triangle of the chalice meeting the triangle of the blade, the feminine and the masculine in union, this place where the higher chakras and the lower chakras come to meet. And I think we heard some of that message transmitted in that Radiant Sutra that we began with here. So how does all of this information come together? Let me ask the tea. And see if I can keep my tired eyes and heart open to speak what's been coming through for me. The comet, the wild card. In clearing the clutter of the heart, I think most of us have had experience in our lifetime where we've shut the beauty of the heart down, where we've armored it, where we've protected it. We were hurt at some time when we shared our heart vulnerably. We hurt another and decided to protect others by shielding this connection that is true intimacy at some time in our life. And you know, that tissue, that armor, becomes a scar tissue that can be very hard to clear. I speak about this often, and I feel into this often. It's very real in my own experience, in my own presence, and I imagine that this gate specifically is going to be a pretty strong one for me. So the idea of the comet is that this is basically the event that caused the flood. You know, the flood is not just some biblical myth. It's told to us from so many global stories of many cultures and civilizations around the world. I mean, mile-high waves, you know, and just an end to a greater civilization. Maybe this was Atlantis, you know, a word that we have to be careful with, because in the astrological community especially, where we seem to be defending ourselves against those who would consider us snake oil medicine pushers or pseudoscientists. Atlantis is another one of those keywords that will really get the scientists on edge. And that word really comes to us first from Plato, and it's been played with ever since. I feel personally that Atlantis was the name for Earth some time ago, when we had reached a very high intelligence and civilization. And some of the New Age perspective is that Atlantis grew too technological, in a sense that these people grew away from the powers, from the magic of the heart, and away from spirit, and then in a sense were eradicated. But there's these temples left. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey is one of the temples that Graham Hancock is really looking into in Magician of the Gods. I would even say the pyramids, though the current understanding is that they were built much later, and I'm speaking about the pyramids in Giza. They feel to me as remnants from this ancient time, certainly the Sphinx. And there's evidence all around the world, and evidence that has been covered up and suppressed. And the question is why? So there's been arguments by the conspiracy theorists that those who would choose to control humanity suppress the truth of our history, because if you control the past, you control the future. And that's certainly worthy of our contemplations, but there's another thing that comes to my heart and to my mind, and it's this idea of catastrophobia. This brilliant term that I think was first coined by Barbara Handclough, another brilliant author who I had the privilege to see speak here in Seattle last month. Catastrophobia, this idea that something very tragic, something very heavy happened here on Earth. I mean, almost eradicating humanity, but we survived, be it Noah or Deucalion is the analog from the Greek traditions. I mean, there's these many names of the one who was instructed to build the boat, or those who went to live with the ant people inside the earth until the storm and the ice cleared. And this idea of catastrophobia, I mean, why would we look into that pain, into that darkness, into that shadow, when it's so painful, even on a very core, genetic, archetypal, psycho-spiritual level? There's just too much pain there for us to go and take a look at our true history. And of course I'm sharing this because I find an analog with my own personal experience and with our experience as humans in the way of the heart. Did the comet strike? Were we hurt? Was it ripped open? Did the heart break? Was it shattered? Do we have to protect it? And now can we not look at that time of tragedy? And are we hiding from our true nature, our true experience, to try to move forward in such a way of joy? And the deal with the heart is it is this beautiful source of feeling. And feeling isn't only joy, yeah? The emotional experience is a very wide range of spectrum of feeling. And I think that's really important in this month, that we engage with the greatest joys and ecstasies, but that we also allow for ourselves the engagement with some of the more painful emotions, and to see that they too are truth, and that they too are part of this beautiful human experience in the earth game. And we come here into these bodies, and the heart is in the body. I had this meditation yesterday with another Venus group that I'm a part of, led by Kaylin Castell and Tammy Brunk. And you can check that out at venusalchemy.com if you'd like to join. It's a wonderful group, but the meditation was to look on the altar for a symbol of this heart gate, basically. And my eyes were open. I was looking at this altar that is my tea table, and my gaze fell upon this gourd. Right, so the gourd with the silk is used as a strainer for the tea. And I really thought of that image of this gourd and the strainer and the filter as an image of my own heart. You know, what is this like hard shell and this beautiful organic shape, and what do I allow through and what do I filter out? And in this idea of really opening the heart, is this about just allowing everything in and out? Or is it wise to engage with a filter in some sense? I don't have an answer to that, but I feel that this month that will be a really leading contemplation for me to engage with the clutter that I'm meant to clear from my heart. The idea of spiritual protection and protecting our heart is a very interesting one. You know, when we open, as so many of us are now, to our empathic gifts and our energetic gifts, it can be really challenging. You know, in a crowd of people, and we're starting to feel others' energies, and you know, sometimes that's really unsafe. We can be called as healers to just suck the venom out of the snake victim's leg where the bite was, whatever. And if we haven't been trained to purge that venom, then we're just taking on that illness to save them and making ourselves sick. This idea of martyrdom that really seems to be part of the program of this maybe last couple thousand years in the age of Pisces, that I feel that we're being asked to release now. So part of awakening into the empathic nature that really is humanity seems to be learning some kind of spiritual protection. You might have heard me speak in the past about my bracelet as my on-off switch, this exterior technology that's really, though it is a beautiful lapis bracelet, that's really just a reminder of my internal technology, that I have this on-off switch, so that if I'm engaged in a consultation with a client, I can turn that empathy on, and I speak this prayer in readings, may this person's wisdom speak through my mouth, and then at the end of the reading it comes off and I clean it and say another prayer, because I don't want that to be wide open in traffic. Yeah, so there's lots of different kind of spiritual tools for protection that have been used throughout the ages. Black tourmaline is a crystal, you know, from the mineral kingdom that seems to do that. And I carried tourmaline in my pocket for a long, long time, and sometimes I still do. And I'm playing around those District of Columbia monuments. It seems to be a go-to move for me. But some time ago, a dear friend, Emily, gave me this crystal that's ruby fuchsite. And it's really about opening the heart. It's green and pink, the colors of the heart chakra. And I, for the most part, have replaced the black tourmaline, which we're told is here to kind of convert the negative energies into positive, this kind of spiritual protection, with protecting myself with love. And therefore, it's not really a protection. It's just to know that I am held and I am safe. And I can open myself to intimacy and to sharing my true heartfelt experience, not only with others, but with myself. And I think as we look into the astrology for this Venus month, we'll see that theme come in again and again. Perhaps first and foremost that Venus is now in the sign of Scorpio as she makes this alignment with the crescent moon tomorrow. Again, exact December 7th, Monday, the day of the moon, 9:25 a.m. on the West Coast, and exactly at 3 degrees Scorpio. Well, for me, Scorpio is the art of the water element being the nature of the heart, of the feelings. And I like this for the fixed signs, which Scorpio, like Leo, is member to, that the fixed signs are the art of the element. I heard this phrase some time ago, that art is the bridge between science and spirit. And it just resonated so much. And I saw that astrologically, that in a sense that the cardinal signs are like the science of the element. Not to mean that they're all scientists, but that, like Cancer, this is the science of the heart, of the waters. It is the energy of the nurturing mother. How can we give that love as a creative and nurturing force? That Pisces, the healer, the feeler, the merger, the bodhisattva, this is the spirit of the water element. And the bridge between the two is Scorpio. The art of the water in its highest light. I feel Scorpio Mystery School is about the absolute, vulnerable, and authentic allowance of the complete experience and expression of the deepest passions, desires, and excitement. And so Crescent Moon and Venus align here at the 3rd degree of Scorpio, as we still find ourselves within a Scorpio moon cycle. The Scorpio new moon was November 11th, 2015. And the next cycle begins with the Sagittarius new moon, which I believe is December 11th. So in the Scorpio moon cycle, as we're reaching this last week, which began a few days ago, this time of wisdom in the cycle, the crescent moon comes back to Scorpio and finds Venus there. And there's this statement of, do you want to go into the heart? Well, you can't just dive into the shallow end, dive into the depths. And that is Scorpio. No fear of the deep dive, no fear of the darkness, no fear of death, but no fear of light, no fear of life. In fact, Scorpio is about becoming fully alive. How can we follow that voice of our highest excitement, which lives there in the place of the heart, that lives here in the place of will and life force? And so much of this time, this month of Venus or Inanna descending into the heart gate to clear the clutter from vulnerably allowing the authentic feelings, the heart, in service to that Leo lioness, where Venus began this 19-month quest in August. Can we really find this fire, this roaring flame of the Hara without engaging with the truth of our heart? But we're so often cultured to hit the mute button. Here's some fear I'm not allowed to express. Here's some so-called negative emotion. Here's some anger. Quiet you. And then we also lose that just intimate, graceful connection to our bliss and to our excitement. So if we don't know what we want to do or which way we want to turn, this so often is the case because we've lost that connection to our heart's truth. And often, at least in my own path, I've found that has been a remnant of me turning off the negative stuff. This Venus-Moon conjunction is very close to my sun sign, which is in the 1st degree of Scorpio. And I've had a lot of that scorpionic experience in my lifetime in so many ways, but when I was young, diagnosed bipolar, which I thought was some genetic disorder handed down to me. Through the lineage, medicated for that into robot status, and finally getting away from those drugs, self-medicating for a time, until I've really learned to embrace my emotional authenticity in its light and its shadow. I told this story just last night, and it's one that I really love. That I had this day, it wasn't long ago, it's when I really began working as an astrologer, and my passion for this is, very obvious, but it was this blissful day. I had clients, and this kind of psychic information was coming through, and I was just so high and so in love with having found my calling, at least for this time in my life. And I was heading to this yoga class that evening, and I had this crush on the yoga teacher. And it felt mutual, but that night at class, it was very obvious that it was not. So I was driving home, and the pity party was welcoming me to the dance floor, and these patterns of you're not good enough, and all these voices within, and the depression creeping in. And what I realized in that moment was actually in this pain, in this fear, I actually felt more alive than I had all day in the bliss and the joy. And I found that to be very interesting. And in that moment, I really began to shift my relationship to depression. Because I said, well, who are you? And wow, you're really making me feel alive right now. And what a thing. And let's talk about this. What's the message? And depression freaked out. He's like, hey man, like I'm here, I'm the boogeyman, I'm here to scare you. You're not allowed to speak to me as like a friend. And so it's been a really interesting relationship since then. And now if some depression comes my way, it's much easier to, like, instead of run from it and treat it like the monster, to embrace it. And as we embrace a monster in the dream, and it becomes the teddy bear or something cuddly, it's been a lot like that in my life experience, in this dream that we are awakening into in so-called reality. And that really, I think, was, in a sense, a reward for time that I had spent in meditations where I had left my body. And when that was first happening, I was just terrified. And I'd get out, and it was like, oh my gosh, am I allowed back in, or do I get a new one, or what's happening? And just freaking out. But then I would come back in, and after some time in this kind of experience, I learned to release my fear of it and to observe it, and really became conscious of this awareness that I was still me. I was me in almost every way that I know of myself, besides two things. There, in my experience, was no time, and there were no feelings. And I'm a very watery guy, so that was very obvious. And then I'd come back in, and I realized through that experience that one of the greatest callings of the Earth game, at least in my own soul's path here, is to feel. And that depression, that pain, that heartbreak, that anger, that fear and grief, all of these things, they are feelings. I mean, the heart is in the body, and we come here to be in the body. We come down into that chalice, the feminine energy of earth, body, and water, heart. And therefore, even the painful experiences, this is the authentic experience of the heart. And we have to be vulnerable to allow that. And so as I started engaging with that contemplation, I then had that kind of yoga teacher depression moment, and really began to reframe my experience with this demon of depression, to see it not as a demon at all. And my life has changed really drastically since then. And I personally anticipate more of that type of lesson presenting itself to me during this Venus month that begins with the crescent moon Venus conjunction very close to my sun sign in Scorpio, and so close to this comet, this wild card that maybe in a sense can bring forth that nature of catastrophobia, or what happened when the comet struck. And these stories of the fox or the coyote that seem to be symbols of the comet from long ago, the trickster that we just don't know what it's going to do. And how does that really reflect my own felt experience in this lifetime with my own heart? What are my fears when a new brilliant comet flies by in my own experience? Can I allow that engagement with love? Or when does my mind come in and shut it down, and the judgments that would keep me as the filter would, from allowing all of the tea into my cup, if you will. Interesting, the cup. An age-old symbol for the heart, as the Tarot teaches. I've been drawing these power animal cards for each of the Venus gates, and I think I'll do that now. The tarot deck I'm using is actually on my phone. It's Stephen Farmer's Power Animal Oracle cards, which I first bought because the art was done by a beautiful brother named Eric Nez. So I'm just going to scroll through here and pick a card and we'll see what we get. Alright. Beaver. Productiveness. Go ahead and just do it. Interesting message for the beaver. But when I think of the beaver, I think of the dam, you know, and damming the waters. Is there a productive nature, again, in building the filter, and the beaver builds the dam so that it can live in the water in a safe way? Maybe this is truly living in the heart. I'll read Stephen Farmer's words here. Whatever the project is that you have before you, it's time to get to it. You think you have to do this, or that to get prepared, but you could spend all your time planning and organizing and never get to it. You already have everything you need. Just look around, and what you don't have will come to you as you proceed with your project. You spent enough time thinking, talking, planning, and preparing, so don't make it a bigger deal than it is. Approach it like building a dam, one twig at a time. No more excuses, and nothing more to do to get ready. And you don't have to do it perfectly. Plus, you have a lot more support than you think you do. You not only have friends and family members who will be there, but support from your spiritual allies. You've given a lot of support to others, even though you tend to downplay your contributions to their lives. And now it's time for you to receive their support. So take a deep breath and get on with it. Well, I love the image of the beaver as a water animal. But, you know, one key word came in there, which is receiving. It can be much easier for us to give our waters, for us to give our caring and our nurturing than it is for us to receive it. What's up with that? Is it because the farmer feels safer? Or because we've been wounded by the latter in our own personal experience by that catastrophic comet of the past? So this comet's called Catalina, and I'm reading this book again, Magician of the Gods by Graham Hancock, and I decided then, well, synchronicity's aligning and I should just check out ancient civilizations in Catalina, and found my way to a couple articles that were really interesting. One was 11,000-year-old seafaring Indian sites discovered on California Island, the islands of Catalina and Santa Rosa. Very interesting that this is the time of the end of the Younger Dryas, when the warm period came to end that ice age back then, and civilization started to rebuild. Intriguing. And another one I found right on Graham Hancock's site, which was about this author. Where is this? Richard Dewhurst. Alright, and speaking of his book, The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America. Now, we're talking about the suppression of truth. The whole giant thing is something challenging, but something very worth looking into. I'm going to read this paragraph. But the most amazing discoveries in California were eventually found on Catalina Island in the 1920s. The island of Catalina was owned by the Wrigley Chewing Gum family, who hired Professor Ralph Gideon to conduct a series of digs on the island under the direction of Catalina Museum. What they found made headlines around the world, only to be written out of the history books less than 10 years later. In short, Gideon and his team exhumed the remains of 3,781 skeletons of a race of blonde-haired giants. The tallest was believed to be a king who measured 92 inches tall, and the average height of the skeletons was reported to be around 7 feet. In addition, the team found the remains of a megalithic Stonehenge-era temple. Later radiocarbon dating revealed that some of the skeletons unearthed were 7,000 years old. For over 50 years, the proofs pertaining to these discoveries were vigorously denied by the University of California and the Smithsonian, but in 2011 it was finally admitted that the evidence for these finds has been locked away from the public in the restricted access evidence rooms of the Smithsonian, along with detailed field reports and hundreds of photos. What is up with that? Have you ever heard of the race of the blonde giants who lived here in America, the red-haired giants? It's a trip and very worthy of your investigation, because this is deep truths that have been hidden. This used to be like headline material in newspapers across this country and really worldwide, and has been so suppressed. And it's interesting, why are we so afraid to know the truth of our history? Fascinating. So what a cool synchronicity that this Catalina comet and Graham Hancock's visit to Seattle, Washington, where I reside, all seem to collide. But hopefully this time without a collision. Okay, to the charts. So again, Venus begins with the moon here at 3 degrees Scorpio, which the Sabian symbols would tell us is the 4th degree. I'm going to grab my Sabian book. This one, an astrological mandala by Dane Roger, the great humanistic astrologer from the 20th century. 3 degrees Scorpio, actually 4 degrees. A youth carries a lighted candle in a devotional ritual. Roger's keynote to that symbol that was channeled by Elsie Wheeler at the behest of Mark Edmund Jones in the late 1920s. Roger's keynote is the educative power of ceremonies which impress the great images of a culture upon its gathered participants. A youth carries a lighted candle in a devotional ritual. Well, there's these things about Scorpio, about magic, about ritual. There can be a lot of fear around that kind of stuff. And, you know, when I'm out in DC, as I have been a lot, investigating these mysteries, part of me is like, whoa, I should just sign up for the secret societies and find out the secrets of the universe. And then it's usually some animal that will come through and it's like, no, not for you, not in this lifetime. Just look from the outside. There's this fear of these old ritualistic, societies, whatever. And maybe there's some sense to that, maybe not. That seems to be the filter on the gourd, at least for me. But what about magic in general, which is so key to Scorpio? And what about the magic of the heart? And can we engage with our own rituals? Be careful what we're calling in, but have fun with it. There's this great saying I love. When the Beatles were first playing gigs, they had to go to Germany, or they just had the opportunity to. They were so young. And they were playing just all day and all night, late night. And the Germans, they say, would yell at them, "Make show!" And that comes to me a lot when I'm doing my own, ritual. So tomorrow, with the Venus-Moon conjunction and this completion of the month of clearing the clutter around the throat chakra, I'll remove this double-stranded necklace, as Adana wears the double-stranded lapis necklace in her story and removes that at the throat gate. And then we'll move into the heart gate, where the symbol in her story is the golden breastplate called "Come Man Come." So I'm going to have to figure out something for that. But when I do this, I'll make show. I'll have a magical ritual. It's not going to be something according to some ancient text or magic book. It's going to be following the joy and the truth of my own heart. And as I've allowed myself to engage more and more with some of the painful energies and to see the teachings there, I've opened also to receiving the joyful energies and just the playful, fun energies, and may that be so for all of us. And I think this is really important as we are opening and engaging with our own magical selves, to just go for it, to have fun, to make show, and to know that we are guided within and protected and directed and held and supported in these kinds of things. So tomorrow's a really beautiful day for you, if you've been practicing along with this 13th flower Venus cycle, to have a ritual, of your own demise, of your own design, not your own demise. We shall hope, and release the throat, and then go down into the heart. It's been really amazing in this path through the chakras from crown down. I mean, usually in chakra work, everything I've seen, you start from the root and you go up, and we'll be doing that at the second half of this cycle. But it's really interesting to go from the top down and clear the clutter, because it's like from the crown month, what's keeping me from connecting to source, my higher self, the third eye, my perceptions, how are they filtering or even manifesting my experience in such ways that I can't understand them? How is the conditioning keeping me from seeing my true reality? The throat, what's keeping me from hearing and speaking truth? And all of that gets cleared before we can go into the heart. And it makes a lot of sense. I wasn't able to do a throat chakra interview this month as I have for the other ones. It was going to be Marya Stark, who's been a wonderful cohort and a dear participant in this Venus journey, because Marya, not only an incredible musician and poet, but she's also very versed, experienced, and a practitioner of communication as medicine. So her message for the throat chakra seemed to really make sense. And it didn't line up. We tried twice and the computer wasn't letting it go down. So I believe I'll be able to speak with Marya during this Venus month, during this Heart Chakra month, which actually just even makes more sense for our communication. So I'll look forward to bringing that forth. It's been a while since I've posted a conversation. I did record one just a couple nights ago with the great Seattle astrologer Rick Levine, which was about this very, I feel, important astrological aspect, this astronomical alignment that has recently opened up, which is Saturn square Neptune. And you can hear much more about that when I post this video with Rick Levine, or I encourage you to research that from what others are saying. Rick and I think, just began what I hope to be a 3-part series. But last month when I was looking at the throat chakra timings for ceremony, and I got to Thanksgiving Day, and I was like, oh, there's nothing there really. I didn't see, because I was really looking at the moon and Venus and Mercury for the throat chakra, I didn't see that that was the first of the 3 exact Saturn square Neptune alignments. So this time has begun. And in many ways, it's like the dream versus reality. There's so much to say about that. I'm not going to take our time with it here today. What we're going to do right now is follow Venus this month, and also look to the moon, since the moon and Venus are the astronomical symbols and signals for Venus and Inanna's descent through the gates. I've been sharing every month my personal planetary correlation with the chakras, and for me, Venus is the heart chakra. So last month it was throat chakra, where I find Mercury is the best fit, and we looked at Mercury's movement, but this month it's like pure Venus. So we will look at Venus and the moon. And again, here we start on Monday, the day of the moon, December 7th, with crescent moon conjunct Venus, even occulting Venus, hiding Venus in Scorpio, asking her maybe even more to allow herself to go into the darkness. And you can see here that she's with this other symbol. This is a very interesting and kind of different glyph for the asteroid goddess Juno, who is the goddess of relationship. who at this time is conjunct Venus and Moon, but just over the line in the last degree of Libra. You know, we could say maybe very highly evolved or matured Libra energy, and that's probably where Juno best fits. But the mythological stories of Juno and her marriage with Jupiter aren't always so beautiful. So some of this Libra and peace and relationship and diplomacy, meeting this engagement with clearing the clutter of the heart. Well, how have we been hurt? How have we been betrayed? This is very much part of the Juno story. If we look into the old ways and planetary rulerships, well, Scorpio, where Venus is, into this descent of the Heart Gate, is in a sign, that Scorpio, that was traditionally ruled by Mars. And Mars in Libra, a sign traditionally ruled by Venus. So they are in this exchange program. They're in each other's signs. And this in the old ways would not be called, which some of you may have heard this term, mutual reception, because they're also in what's called aversion to each other. They can't see each other. When we sit in a circle of 12 people, it's hardest to see your neighbor. But that's the one where it's like, hey, will you please pass the jelly or whatever, and that you can play footsie with under the table if you're in good relation. So this is called a simple reception. They can't see each other, but they are in each other's sign, and that's very interesting. You know, I spoke about this last month, that on these gates on the way down, Venus skipped Libra. She was 2 gates in Virgo, and then now this gate in Scorpio, she skipped Libra, which natively is one of her signs. So it's interesting that Mars is holding down that space now. And in fact, this Venus synodic journey, which we would say is the Leo overtone as shamanic astrologers, we would also suggest that Mars is currently engaged in a study of the Libra mysteries, that the overtone for Mars, not just because Mars is in Libra now, but that where he was when he was opposed the Sun on April 8th, 2014, that began a roughly 26-month period of Mars, or the sacred masculine energy, investigating Libra. Okay, a sign traditionally ruled by the feminine, by Venus. So what is it that they're in this reception, that they're in this exchange program now as we engage with the mysteries of the heart? My last podcast for my StarryTelling podcast episodes, it was some time ago now, but it was in response to scientists recently having discovered evidence for running water on Mars. That happened shortly after the last blood moon eclipse in September. And, you know, the fascination for me was, oh, this is a symbol of the sacred masculine crying. And why is he crying? And you can check that out if you like. StarryTelling podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud. You can link it from the homepage of my website, morethan.astrology.com. I tell the story of Frey and Gerd, and look into this idea of Mars in Libra, where the old ways would say Mars is in his detriment. And the old ways would say the same thing about Venus and Scorpio. But I love this energy of them investigating each other's like native signs. Can we let the yin check out the yang and the yang check out the yin? And yet Scorpio is traditionally a feminine sign, and Libra, an air sign, traditionally a masculine sign. So this exchange goes in many ways. There's one other thing I would show you about Mars now, is that he's engaged with this T-square. Let's get Eris out of here. With Uranus in Aries, and Pluto in Capricorn. And Pallas Athena, the asteroid goddess of wisdom, is right there with Pluto, and this is at the time of the Moon-Venus gate tomorrow. So what is this? Well, if you've been following astrology, you've heard all sorts of information about the Uranus-Pluto square, 7 exact alignments between June of 2012 and last year, really this year, 2015. And some would say because the last of the exact alignment has ended, it's over, but look how close they are, 2 degrees, and they'll get even closer, I think, kind of getting as close as they can, Uranus and Pluto in the square in February, and Mars comes in now, and there's resonance with that cardinal grand cross in April of 2014. when the 4 blood moons of the last couple of years first started. I don't want to get us too trapped in the past, but there's a lot of energy here, and when we see a T-square like this, it's really looking towards this missing piece that would complete the grand square, or the grand cross, and that is Cancer. You know what I said earlier, the science of the heart, the nurturing, and even the vulnerability. Can we allow ourselves to engage with Scorpio and head into the true magic of our felt experience? Is that a way that we can actually honor the asteroid goddess of relationship, instead of only thinking that peace comes from not allowing ourselves to have the felt experience? Alright, so Mars in Venus' sign, and Venus is in Mars' sign, and Mars in this very dynamic alignment, this T-square, Uranus and Aries. There's this idea of self versus other, and war versus peace, and all sorts of things that I've talked about. Too much to do so now. And squaring Pluto in Capricorn, which is the archetype of Venus's last overtone, from January 2014 until this Leo overtone began in August 2015, and with the asteroid goddess Pallas Athena of wisdom. Well, Pluto in the modern rulerships is the one that represents Scorpio mysteries, and the wisdom of being able to go into the darkness, into the winter, into Capricorn, as we are now. And you can see on this West Coast chart anyway, when Crescent Moon and Venus make this occultation into the darkness, Capricorn is rising. And so it is. We are heading into those dark months now. Another thing you'll see is that Crescent Moon and Venus are in a trine to Neptune. Neptune in Pisces, healing, feeling, opening the celestial realms, also confusion and delusion, but the spirit of the waters, the healer, the empath. Can we remember, as our beaver card instructs us to, that we do have support, we do have friends and family and soul family and spirit family that loves us, and can we engage with them if we need to? It's not drawn here, but they, on this West Coast chart anyway, complete a grand water trine to the descendant, a place where shamanic astrology looks for right relationship. So we're seeing these relationship themes, and there's a lot of statement of look to Cancer, look to nurturing, look to that energy of the true mothering nature. Isis, the real Isis, divine mother, not this nonsense that we're hearing about by the programmers. Mary, Ceres, Demeter. And where is Ceres and Demeter? Well, in Aquarius, freedom. And she's trine Mars and Libra in Venus' sign. So, astrology is such a gift, and it's such a endless, exciting opportunity for contemplation. I don't want us to get too lost in it. But we'll see how this thing moves along.